Hi everyone. I want to start off with a thank you for everyone who came out here to support and everyone who gave me a chance to speak here today. As Akash said, my name's Tharoon and I'm a student at Milburn High School. When my friend Sonia first asked me to speak here today, I was nervous and overwhelmed with a sense of irrational fear. These feelings have been consistent for my entire coming out journey, but today I want to talk about my story of working to overcome them. Looking back, I first knew I was somewhat different in 5th grade. As my friends started talking about cute girls that explored their very real relationships, I felt as if I couldn't relate. But as I slowly came to realize that I liked boys in the same way my friends liked girls, I didn't have any words to describe it. In my sheltered youth, I barely knew the term gay, let alone what it actually meant to be gay. My first real exposure to the one most important word in my life came in middle school, when my friends would say, "Ew, that's so gay." We adopted a new vernacular, one where we believed any type of slur was cool. Gay became synonymous with everything bad in the world. Because of this, I would intentionally lower my voice an octave, and would never dare talk about my secret obsessions with James Charles, Jeffree Star, and the world of fashion and beauty, all in hopes no one would uncover my secret queerness. These habits were more of an unconscious survival instinct than a choice. I felt I had to change myself to fit in and be respected, and those instincts permeated into almost all my thinking. As middle school progressed, I slowly started to accept that maybe I did like boys, which only led me to develop a deep self-hatred. This is because I had been told by my environment that queerness was associated with everything bad, weird, or abnormal. I think by most time queer kids realize they're queer, we've already learned to hate ourselves. I always wanted to be normal, and at the time I thought being gay made that impossible. I tried to convince myself that I was bi and that I could live out a normal future with a wife and kids. It was only after 7th grade, when a girl told me she liked me, and I chose to quite literally run away, did I come to fully accept that I was gay. As my self-hatred built up, and a part of me wanted to share my secret, but I was scared of how I thought it would change my life. The summer after 8th grade, when my family took our annual trip to India, I felt more isolated than I had ever been. Isolation is a common feeling for queer youth. We feel we must protect our secret, but at the same time, it brings upon a heavy loneliness and sadness. I felt as if no one knew the real me. I was constantly living a lie. Even the good moments hurt, since I thought those moments would never exist again when everyone found out I was gay. It was that summer when I came out to the very first person. My mind was filled with dark thoughts. Maturing during middle school is hard for any kid, but it's only made that much harder when queer kids are living in a culture that consistently taught themselves to hate themselves. I eventually reached a point of severe desperation. I remember standing on my cousin's balcony. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. I remember standing on my cousin's balcony on the 18th floor, leaning on the railing and looking down at the ground. Some part of me pictured what it would be like to simply jump off. I envisioned what it felt like to fall through the air and hit the floor. In those moments, what held me back was the thought of my family, my friends, and everyone in my life. I realized that there had to be at least one person, if not a few, that would still love me regardless. It was that night I chose to come out to my friend Maddie, the girl I had mentioned earlier. I chose Maddie because I knew she would never give up on me. Despite 2 years of me being rude and arrogant, she was the first to offer me help. I told her over text and made her guess. At the time, I was too tired to type, let alone say the words, "I'm gay." Coming out to Maddie was one of the best decisions I have ever made. Throughout freshman year, she would spend hours on FaceTime with me every day, as I used her as a type of pseudo-therapist. She gave me advice and helped me come to realize that maybe everyone in the world wouldn't hate me. Most importantly, she kept my secret safe no matter what burden that placed on her. For many kids or parents in the audience, if any queer child entrusts you with their secret, it is vital to not tell anyone without their permission. When that trust is violated, a kid would only feel more lost, betrayed, and maybe even hated. As times got tough in freshman year, my sexuality constantly loomed over my head. My friends started to hang out with girls and dive into serious relationships. I started to feel a little left behind, as if maybe I didn't belong. Sometimes my friends would ask the question, "Are you gay?" And while it may seem harmless, that question is the last thing a closeted person wants to deal with. As basketball season rolled around and I started working countless hours between school, practice, games, and homework, as most high schoolers know, my anxiety started to build up. I started to shake my leg every time I had to sit still in a classroom. I would spend nights awake crying on my bedroom floor, and my eating habits continually got worse and worse. At some points, my mom would have to sit with me as I ate, reminding her 15-year-old son to take bites of his food. I was truly blessed to have her. One day, when struggling through dinner, my mom noticed something was off with me. She asked me what was wrong, and I deflected the question, blaming it on basketball and school. I could tell she really wanted to help, and as I continued with my excuses, I knew she could see through me. Some part of me knew that if my mother was willing to sit there for 2 hours and only be supportive, she wasn't going to give up on me. I summoned all the courage I had and whispered the words, "Ma, I'm gay." She immediately gave me a hug and told me she was glad I had told her. After a few minutes, she proceeded to get my dad. That night, we had an almost 3-hour conversation. I was constantly reminded of how much they loved me, regardless of my sexuality. I was crying to them. I even tried to explain that I hated myself because I couldn't, quote, biologically procreate. I was filled with so much self-hatred that I thought it was the right thing to do to try to convince my parents to hate me too. My mom also asked if I had ever come out to my brother. He's 3 years older than me, and we've always been close. I told her I hadn't, but I think he already knew. Later that night, I remember calling him aside, and I told him. He responded by saying that he did, in fact no, and had known since I had been in 6th grade. I nodded my head, but I never really had gotten the chance to tell my brother thank you. I don't exactly know how he found out, but I have nothing but respect for him, for giving me the space to come out to him on my own terms. He never forced questions onto me, or made me tell him, and I think for anyone in the audience here who might think that they know a kid who is gay, don't force them to have conversations they don't want to. Let them come to you when they're ready, and the best thing to do is to make yourself a person they feel comfortable talking to. That night, I also opened up to my struggles with my mental health. My mom said something that will live with me forever. She said, "Tarun, I don't care if you're gay. That doesn't matter to me. I'm more concerned about your mental health." And I think that's an important message that we need to stress. That night, they offered me a therapist, but I said no because I didn't want to be labeled or seen as someone who needs help. The stigma of that was scary, and it wasn't something that I wanted to live with. Eventually, after many conversations with my parents that ended in me crying, I realized I was putting an undue burden onto them, and I gave in. My therapist and I would talk about how I planned to come out and who I wanted to come out to next. It was like I had a friend to confide in, but who also gave me a sense of confidence in myself. One of my major issues that still lingered, and maybe still does today, was my self-hatred. My queerness made me see myself as less than my straight counterparts. And as a way to cope, I chose to compensate in order to satisfy my mental health. I channeled my hatred into a fuel to work harder in school and get perfect grades. As I felt my sexuality was a flaw and I needed to be perfect at everything else to compensate, to earn the respect of my peers. For most of my life, this mindset worked. I did achieve what I had wanted, but I was blinded to the toll this would take on my self-image. It took years for me to overcome that. My therapist definitely helped, but she wasn't the only one that helped. As high school progressed and my support system expanded, I grew more comfortable in my skin. I slowly started to come out to more and more friends. My life only got better. I was out to almost everyone I talked to, and none of them reacted poorly. Sure, there were a few maybe acquaintances along the way that I heard say something I didn't like or feel comfortable with about gay people. But for me, I was overwhelmingly supportive, and that's a message I want to share with any of the kids out there who may be struggling. For every one person who might say something to you, you have tens and not hundreds in our community that have your back. I mean, just look around. I wish I could give each of my friends a shout out and explain to them how much they helped me. But I think they know who they are. They already know that I wouldn't be able to stand up here today if it wasn't for each and every one of them. Many of them have spent sleepless nights and countless hours listening to me discuss my mental health and sexuality, and I cannot thank them enough. I stand in front of you guys here today, proudly out of the closet. But as an 18-year-old, I still do struggle with some of the self-hate that's spent so many years festering in my mind. We as a community need to work to foster a more supportive and queer-friendly environment. That includes reading stories to our kids with queer characters, having conversations to them about what that rainbow flag represents, and teaching them that every human deserves to be loved, regardless of who they choose to love themselves. This also involves teaching our middle school age kids not to use homophobic slurs, because being gay really isn't a bad thing, and while also showing them that the words they use might actually be harming some of the friends they actually care about. And for high schoolers, if you think a friend may be struggling with their sexuality, don't bombard them with questions about it. Simply ask them how they're doing and let them know you're there for them no matter what. They'll appreciate it and come to you when you're ready. Again, wrapping up, I want to say thank you for everybody for coming out and listening to me speak. When I first heard Shiv's story almost a year ago, it really resonated with me. There are not many role models in the queer South Asian community. I hope that hearing my story may help some kids in the audience to realize that they're not alone. And to everyone, it may not be much, but if you can take small actions, like the ones I mentioned, to make our communities more accepting for queer youth, it can save lives and change the world. Thank you.